Good afternoon, everybody. Hello again, and welcome again to Unqork's Twitch channel and the Uncoder. Um, we are. I've been promising you that we're going to start to increase these, so start to get really excited because officially starting Tuesday, we're going to be coming at you twice a week. I'll remind you again of this at the end. We're going to come at you twice a week with the Uncoder. And we're also going to be launching a new series of Twitch episodes, our community success hour led by Danny, who joined us a few weeks ago for one of our Uncoder Twitches. So a lot of action on Twitch. Be sure that you're subscribed and following us and all that good stuff so you can continue to keep up with the great stuff we're trying to show you here on the Twitch channel. So today's episode, it's going to be me, sorry, and we're going to talk about release management integrations, CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. You can see the graphic I've chosen today for my wallpaper is an infinity sign because that's generally what gets associated with CI/CD. It's this constant, ongoing process of deploying and monitoring and redeploying and so on and so forth. So talk about some of those capabilities in the context of Unqork, but not even just Unqork. But really, and I said the first, it was release management integrations, I said, but also how you can integrate Unqork into other CI/CD platforms that are out there. Certainly, that concept has been around, predates the existence of Unqork and codeless architecture, with platforms such as GitLab, GitHub, other organizations such as that have exposed a lot of these capabilities. And here we are now talking about how we can seamlessly fit into that, even though you've seen a lot of our episodes talking about the SDLC capabilities within Unqork and the fact that you can manage many of these things dedicated within your environment. The reality of software development these days, the reality of enterprise development in particular, is composability. Right, you're going to have a number of different systems that are working together, not all of which, as much as we'd love to say that all of which are going to be built with codeless architecture, and as much as we think you should be building these things with codeless architecture, it's not always going to be the case. So how does that fit into some of the other applications you've built, and also some of the other processes that you've built? Particularly in the enterprise, it's a lot of process. ITSM, IT service management, CM, change management. These are processes that exist in a lot of organizations and are very well regulated. So how can we be a part? How can Unqork and the things that you build codelessly be a part of a broader process and a broader ecosystem of software and tools that help you deliver that process and great software as a result of it? So, as I said, we're going to be talking about 3 today, key ways that you could start to think about baking Unqork and codeless architecture into a broader CI/CD process that you have. And then I probably will get in trouble for doing this. I'm going to give you a sneak peek at something that's coming up that we'll sure to have a Twitch episode on when it's out to the masses, but give you a little sneak peek into some new stuff coming out of the Unqork team that will even expand the possibilities around CI/CD, both completely within Unqork as well as the ability to integrate with things outside of Unqork. So with that said, let's start sharing and let's see what we got here. Cool. All right. I needed to make sure we were up. You get that meta. I'm all about meta, so I do like leaving the my StreamYard screen up to see that, stream within a stream within a stream within a stream. All right. So as I said, I'm going to hit on 3 different concepts or ideas around how you can think about integrating some of the Unqork capabilities into external systems that are helping you manage or deliver your software. And then, this little green one over here, if you know what those 3 letters mean, that's what we're going to be talking about at the end. Very light sneak preview into that. So the first thing I want to talk about is, we had a session on release management under the UDLC series, but how you can take some of the way that release management handles your deployments now and bake that into other systems. So as you know, taking the Unqork release management application, you can construct a release completed with a different number of applications. So we're going to do that. We're just going to create a new release. I'll go through this pretty quick because you should know what this is already. If you're not, please check out the UDLC episodes to learn more about these capabilities. Okay. And I'm going to do another release of this CI/CD application. And I'm going to say releasing for Twitch. All right. I'll come down here. I'll choose CI/CD as my app. And I'm going to say, yes, I did run config analysis. Don't tell anyone that I didn't. And I'm going to create that release. Am I sure? I am very sure. Okay, so what do we have now? So now the first item in the list, as you may have expected, is a tagged release in release management, which means that all of the versions of all the modules and assets within these applications, or this one application in this case, has been captured. So there's that definition of what this release package is. I could, of course, continue to go ahead and I can continue to work on this application in this environment, make new changes, do whatever else I want to do, get working on the next release, no problem, because this tag is representative of the state that things are in the moment I press that button. So now we have this release ready to go whenever it's time to go. Right now, when is time? Of course, that's going to be dependent upon your organization and the rules and things that you abide by. Maybe there are specific change windows that come at midnight, 2 a.m. And I think about all the countless hours of sleep that I lost in my career of software development doing deployments at 2 o'clock in the morning when there was no traffic on the website. Right? At least that's when I was managing, US only applications where I didn't have to worry about time zones. So 2 a.m., let's say, whenever your traffic was down, right? That's maybe going to be still when you want to do these deployments, or maybe you just have specific change windows, and maybe the change windows change, right? So you can't always expect that the moment that you tag a release is going to be the moment that you want to deploy the release, particularly if you're taking those tags throughout the business day. And maybe the first thing you want to do, 9 o'clock in the morning, everybody's done, all the automated tests ran overnight, whatever else you have going on, your application's ready to go. You take that tag at 9 a.m. or whenever you start your day, and then you wait until 2 a.m., 8 p.m., whatever your change window is, to actually go ahead and deploy that. Okay, so the release is ready to go. But let's say that the person who is responsible for deploying it is not using Unqork, or they have other systems that they have given access to folks of that role, and they're not working within Unqork. They want that to happen from another system. So let's envision a world where you're using some change management process or tool, some internal tool that you have hopefully built within Unqork, which would make this a whole lot easier, right? But let's pretend it's not built in Unqork. There are other platforms and providers out there that focus specifically on actions such as that. So let's say that's how you go through the process of submitting your change to your change management board, getting approval on it, and getting the window that you get to deploy it. And let's say it's from that system that someone who's in charge of that process within your organization needs to initiate the deployment. Well, we don't want them to have to go into Unqork. They don't want to maybe have to go into Unqork. So what can they do now? Well, everything that really happens in Unqork, whether it's UDLC or not, is all API enabled. Right? So unsurprisingly, there is an API called promote a staged release. Okay, so this is going to take a staged or tagged release and it's going to promote it. Okay, so what I've done is I'm just going to pretend here that Postman is my ITSM change management system, and I'm going to run my release from this application. So this is my promote stage, and I'm just gonna, since we're talking tag, let's update to say tag there. All right, and it's asking me for the release ID. Okay, so this could be something that you drop into that ticket that you create once you tag it. Hey, here's my tag ID. Whatever it is. Think of it similar if you're using like a Git system, a Git-based system. You might tag a branch, and then you'll have that branch name or tag name or whatever unique identifier it is that exists here too, right? So this is my release ID. Okay, so I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to jump over into Postman, and I'll drop that ID here, and I'll hit send. And there it is. That's a promotion, right? So now I see, okay, yep, this is the ID. This is the application ID. So within this promotion, within this release, these are the applications that were promoted. The CI/CD application was promoted, which happens to have this ID, and its status is successful. It was promoted. So of course, if I jump back over and I refresh this page, the application has now been promoted. Okay, so that is the most straightforward, simple example I could give about how you can have certain users within your organization using Unqork to package things up because they're the ones that have the most knowledge about how to create these packages, create these releases, and everything like that. Again, add in whatever other release notes and version numbers, but then it's might be another team who's responsible for the deployment and then any support around the deployment and things of that nature. Those people might use in different systems, or you might not, again, want anyone to have the ability to promote within Unqork. Right? I think that's something that's coming up with a number of our customers who have these, very rigid systems and processes, and for good reason that they do. They say, listen, I don't want a developer to be able to promote. I mean, how many, if you're working in an organization that is writing a bunch of code and you have a bunch of traditional engineers, how many engineers in your organization can actually do a deployment to production? Very few, if not any, right? So it's the same concept here. Within Unqork, you could, in theory, define your creator users, all the people who are doing all of the development, give none of them the role of promote, right? So if we hop over, wrong tab, open a new one for this. If we go over to our administration inside of designer, right, and I go down to my creator role administration. So let's take my administrator for a second. So this is a user who can promote everything. Yep, well, everything that's promotable, let's say. Okay, and then I can come in and I can say a contributor. Right? Well, I have a contributor with promote, so why don't we look at a viewer? And a viewer can't do anything. So you can envision a world where you're creating users which have this kind of access or whatever access you want to give. So maybe I do want to create a role and say, okay, you could view, create, update, delete, but nobody can promote. The only people who can promote are administrators, or better yet, a single administrative account that acts on behalf of some other system. So let's say you want to allow for that external system to be the only thing that can promote in the system. You create one role with the promote privileges, and only API requests made on behalf of that one user of that one role can actually do the promotion. So you're really locking down your SDLC and making sure, as in many organizations, in many cases, in many teams, it's not the individual developers who are responsible for promotion, because that can obviously get very dangerous. And listen, as someone who had been an engineer for a while and been involved in this, I could tell you I never wanted those permissions. There were times where I had it, access to production, access to do deployments, and it was the worst. Talk about backfiring. You think it's great, you think you got all the power in the world, you're bound to screw something up, or you're bound to get sucked into every single problem that comes your way because you can get in there. So I would assume most of your developers, inside Unqork or not, don't really want the ability to promote because it's just adding to the things that could make their life a little more challenging. Leave it that to the folks whose job is that. And this concept of maybe separating the roles around who can do what is going to be persistent throughout. Maybe a bunch of these possible solutions that we're going to walk through, but starting here. So that's the first way that we're talking about it is just integrating with some of the existing release capabilities and packaging capabilities. Okay. So the second option, so I'll close this one down, remind myself, is not necessarily GitLab, but some external system, source control system even, which has capabilities baked into it around CI/CD, which are often going to be used in these companies that have a lot of code. They obviously need somewhere to put all that code, and many of them are using GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket, and the like. Okay, so what we're going to show in this example is we're going to show how you can tie your module saves, your activity in your environment, to a CI/CD system, to an external CI/CD version control system, and trigger actions within that system. So now you're actually having all of your pipelines, all of your processes, and all of your users sitting in one place there. Okay, so in order to do this, we have a workflow. And I think we've talked about the capabilities I'm going to show before, but here they are again, right? And there's a very powerful set of signal start nodes within our workflow called signal start nodes. These are event-driven start nodes, which says, hey, This workflow is going to begin when an event happens in the system. And currently, the events that are made available are very design creator focused, on activities that happen within Designer. Now, we can envision a world where there's a lot more events, and you can start to build a lot more event-driven stuff on the both front end and back end of Unqork. But the fact that we have it today for, again, those designer level activities really is what enables us to be able to integrate with systems such as GitLab and do more CI/CD like behavior within Unqork. So there's actually two signal start nodes in here. And I think I'm giving away what our next one between my browser tab and our group and this. You know what I'm going to talk about next, but let's start with module save. Okay, so module save is an event that's going to fire when a module is saved. And that's going to be any module in the system. Now I have it set to all modules. I could have spent a specific module, but of course, this is going to be an application, and the application can have multiple modules in it. So I'll do any validation to ensure that the module that's being fired is actually a module that I care about. Okay, and that's going to simply just trigger this one API module called commit module. Okay, now what's going on in this module? Right, so this is a module that's, again, getting invoked every time any module, including this module itself that I'm about to show you, is saved. Okay, and what happens is this workflow gets fired and event data gets passed in to that module. Okay, so if I look in here, the first thing I'm going to do, as this field group describes, is I'm going to get the module. Right, so I'm going to reference the module ID from this get event data. So get event data is the object that gets passed or set into the workflow submission when the workflow is initiated by the event. And within inside of this object are going to be a number of different properties relevant to the event that happened. So of course, if an event fired that said a module was saved and we didn't tell you what module was saved, it's not a very useful event, right? We need some kind of payload with that event that you can make decisions based off of. So in this case, the primary piece of information that I care about when a module is saved is the module ID. It tells me which module is being saved. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that event data and I'm going to get the module's configuration. Okay, which is that JSON open standard, the codeless definition that we've talked about a lot recently. I'm going to get that representation of the JSON. Okay. And from there, I'm going to extract out a few properties. I'm going to extract out the actual entire JSON. I'm also going to pull out its workspace and its application. Okay, so since that JSON definition, that Unqork codeless standard, is fully declarative of the module, it includes what workspace and application it's a part of, or workspaces or applications in case that you're sharing it across your environment. And I'm going to use that to, very simply, because this was built specifically for this one application, I'm going to say, if it lives inside of this app, then let's continue the process. So if it doesn't live in this app, I'm going to ignore that event. It never happened. Okay. So what happens next? Well, I'm going to do a little preparation of this module to send over to this other system, in this case, GitLab. So the first thing that I will do is I'm going to stringify the module. Okay. And that's going to happen. You understand what stringification is, and that's going to happen through a transform inside of Unqork, which is responsible for stringifying it, because I'm going to get back the module JSON as JSON, a JSON object, but I need it to be a string, so it's represented as a file inside the CI/CD system. So I'm going to turn that object into a string, and that's through the standard JSON stringify, which is pretty readily available across any platform, including Unqork. Okay, and then I'm going to do some other calculations here. I won't show the details of this calc unless anyone's really interested, although I can't pull up the chat window to see, because then you'll get that super meta view again. But basically, I'm going to calculate the file path, an encoded version of it, which is required by the API, and then a commit message. Okay, so now basically my commit, or the module information, is ready to go to be committed. Now I'm going to prepare that commit. So what do I mean by prepare that commit? Well, I don't know if I need to update or insert that file into the CI/CD system, because there are effectively, as defined by the API over in GitLab for commits, it says, where's get a single commit, create a commit, right? It asks me for the action, right? And this is required, which says, hey, you need to tell me whether I'm going to be creating this as a new file in Git or I'm going to be updating an existing record. So in order to do that, I simply, go ask GitHub, does this file exist? Right? Does it exist at the path that I have? If there is a file, then I'm going to update, and if there's not, I'm going to insert. And the way I basically just do that is, again, if it exists, I'm going to use my post trigger to say update. And if it doesn't exist, then GitLab is replying to me with a 404 saying this file is not found within this repo. So therefore, my error trigger is going to fire because it's a 404. And at which point I'm going to say that means I need to create it. Now, one other thing I want to indicate that I was reminded of, I was looking in this, is you'll see this ref equals staging. So that is as defined in the definition. Where is it? It's somewhere. But effectively, what that's telling me is that's the branch that I want to commit to. So in this case, I'm committing it to a staging branch because I'm in my staging environment. Similar as if you're writing code and directly committing code into a repository, you're not often writing code directly against your main branch or your trunk, whatever you want to call it. You're often committing to a develop branch or to a feature branch or to some branch that is not your main line, because there's going to be those other activities in any CI/CD process that need to run before you're able to merge that code, or in this case, merge that configuration into your main branch. Okay, so that's why we have ref equals staging. Then the last step is rather straightforward, which is really, and I'm just going to update this to not say prepare commit, but say commit, and that's actually going to commit it. Okay, so I'm just passing through the commit. Okay, so what happens there? So now I did just make a change here. I changed the name of this field group. So my save button is active. So let me go ahead and let me save this module. Now I'm going to jump over to my commits and I'll refresh. And there it is. Okay. Here is the commit that I just made by saving this module. And I can come look, and sure enough, here is the JSON with the diffs that I made. Now, what did I do? I made changes such as, well, I collapsed and uncollapsed some panels in the view. I changed the title of this field group to from prepare commit to commit. So you can see that in many ways, the diff within GitLab is somewhat useful, right? Like a user could come in and get a general idea of what's going on based on this. Now, that's not always going to be the case. While building this out, right, we did see that if you're moving components around your module, well, then the diff doesn't go so hot anymore. And, your standard text-based diffing will tell you that entire sections of your module's JSON, that open standard, has been deleted or changed, when in actuality, you just kind of move things on the page. And that's why, of course, Unqork has those visual diffs of the module revisions tool, of the revision history, and soon to see in this little thing I've got on the right side of my browser, visual diffs and more intelligent diffs, when considering that this is a JSON representation of something visual. So we're going to do a better job at that, to be totally honest. But it doesn't mean you can't also integrate the two things together and look at the visual diff based on it, right? And you'll see here that this was committed. The file is, it ends in 5ac.json, 5ac, right? So I tacked JSON at the end because, of course, it's a JSON file, and it lives within a folder for my workspace and a folder for my application. So we're just building out your directory structure effectively, your environment structure, as we're committing and building up that repo. And of course, you can go and run some process to go and seed that off the bat too, if you want it. So now we have stuff living in Git, GitLab. As I said, the diffing is going to be better inside of a system like Unqork from a visual nature, but you can still control different processes from here. Okay, so what else happened besides this commit getting pushed? Well, I come over here and there was a pipeline. Okay, and you'll see this pipeline executed 2 minutes ago, and it passed. Great, that's what we want to see, right? So when we're doing the CI/CD with or without, codeless, it's all about running certain automation against things as they're committed, and of course, if certain things don't work, catching them immediately, in a continuous manner. So in this case, we passed. That's wonderful. What happened? What passed? Right? So let's go in and let's actually look at our pipeline. Okay. And effectively, this is the pipeline. Now, I admit I'm no expert in defining pipelines, and especially because it's very codey looking too, right? And we don't love that here, do we? Although, we do love code, just not in your application's logic, right? Not in the representation of your app. Other code's cool, as we said last week with IDEs and runtimes and all that good stuff, right? And of course, the code that makes codeless work is super cool too. So effectively, what's happening here, right? We're basically saying that when the job fires, when a commit happens, I'm going to run a test stage in my unit test job, and that's effectively going to call right back into Unqork. This could be calling into any system you have, of course. However, you need to pull together applications in your CI/CD process. But I'm going to call back to Unqork, and I'm going to pass it the commit that is being built through this pipeline or being run through this pipeline, and it's going to tell me whether the status of the tests of the applications or modules within that commit have passed, right? So it's, if anyone is familiar with the command line here, we're basically doing a curl, which is a command line version to invoke an endpoint, and then I'm going to again pass it that SHA, and I'm going to grep, which is basically like a search. I'm going to search the response of this API call for the word pass. If there's pass, that means I passed. If it's not pass, that means I failed, right? And that's a potential, a very simple example, but hopefully gets the juices flowing on the kind of things that you can then tie in to your module save. So every time a creator saves a module in your environment, you can have, of course, we've shown you the automated testing that exists within Unqork and the notifications you're going to get with that. But maybe there are other automated test suites that you're running. Maybe there are, other applications you have that are calling Unqork built APIs, and you want to ensure that they're still up. So you might want to go run a set of automated tests against a different application that just lives in harmony with what you're building within Unqork. And these are the kind of things that you can now run, maybe when you're centralizing it in a system such as this. Okay. And then the second thing you can do, so now I'm within this world, I'm actually committing all my changes into a single place. And what I could, if I so desired, do with that is, what if I come down here and it says, oh, look, I pushed to my staging branch 5 minutes ago. And GitLab's like, well, you want to do a merge. Maybe I do. Maybe I want to merge this into my main branch, right? Which will be my non-development branch. Maybe it could say there, merge into my QA branch, or whatever, however you are doing your your flow, your Git flow, or whatever other flows you want to use in your version control or within your organization. You can come in and you could say, all right, well, these are all the commits that have not been merged yet. And I can come in and I say, let's merge it, right? And I can create, I can define my approvers or reviewers, things like that. If you want to have someone have to review anything else that you're used to seeing in terms of a merge request, I create that merge request. Now I have the merge ready to go. So approval is optional. Again, you can configure these rules as your company typically has these rules set up in the systems like this they're using. And then I could go ahead and I could approve it. I can then merge it, right? So I'll go ahead, I'll merge it. Now it's effectively taking all my JSON from staging and pushing it to main. Now, of course, that in and of itself has no impact on Unqork, because Unqork, that store of the JSON, that's the source of record for the JSON, but this, of course, can fire off new pipelines. So you'll see a pipeline is now running. So I'll click on that pipeline, and effectively, it's just doing the same thing. Right now, I didn't build out what those next steps could be in this demonstration, but let's say now you'll see here, I say, hey, when the commit is to the main branch, so this is effectively when the merge has happened and the tests are successful. So if this doesn't match pass, then you're going to get a negative status code back. So test will not be a positive number or not be 0. So it says, hey, if I'm merging something into main and my tests have passed, and I also put when never because I didn't want it to break, because I didn't completely build it out, then I could effectively run my application deployment. So I could use this to pass that commit back in to Unqork and say, hey, push all of these modules to the higher environment. Create that package via release management. Tag that release in release management. Although in this case, you probably just want to go right ahead and promote it because your approval process and everything else happened within this system. Okay, so that's another example of how you can tie CI/CD in to another system on a module being saved. But as I showed, there is yet another signal start node that exists within our workflow, and that's called on application promotion. Okay, so this one says when a given application is promoted, fire off this workflow and let it do whatever it needs to do. So this is more of like, hey, you're in a world where maybe you're just explicitly using the promotion capabilities directly within Unqork, but you need to alert things out. Maybe you are doing things like tagging a release and then submitting it from an external source. Doesn't matter where, or maybe you're even doing it here, right? It doesn't matter where the promotion is initiated from. The low-level act of promoting will fire off this workflow. So we'll envision that I'm in a world where I'm just going to promote it, normally through Unqork as is, right? And in this case, I do have a specific application selected because I do only care about CI/CD, and applications is the scope by which you promote. So I'm able to choose a specific application. Okay. Now inside of this module, it's super basic. Let your imagination run wild with what you can do. But all I'm doing is I'm once again pulling some of that event data out, grabbing the application ID, and I'm just going to send an email that says, hey, Nick, this application was promoted, and inside of it's the app ID. And if I'm not crazy, so I won't even have to do the promotion again because the promotion I did earlier by creating the tag in release management and then executing that promotion, releasing that tag via Postman, that of course, even though it came from a system like Postman outside of Unqork, that did trigger my workflow to fire, which sent me the email that says this application was promoted. Maybe that's something you do want to. Maybe you want to send notifications to stakeholders every time an app is promoted. That's possible, but we're really talking about the capabilities and the possibilities around informing other systems of this promotion. Like, hey, this application was promoted. Well, maybe you have to go deploy another application which is reliant on this application or vice versa. So allowing you to do event-based activity on a promotion. Okay, so those are the three main ways that I wanted to talk about how you can start to think about, not just having to run your entire SDLC within Unqork, although it's a great way to go, but actually bake it into your other systems because there's a lot of great tools out there that help you manage the SDLC that are focused on specific phases of it. And Unqork, being an integration first platform, gives you that flexibility to plug in wherever you need, whether it's within delivering that user-facing application or on more of the developer side of things and how you're actually running your process to deliver that application. So the last thing, I'm going to do it really quick, is just a little tease ahead. Some of the new stuff that's going to be coming out, again, we'll dedicate it. So version control, right? So version control in Unqork, we've never had an explicit way really before to actually have two users simultaneously working on the same modules at the same time. That's about to change soon enough. I can't speak for exactly when. I think this is going into alpha or an early access program very soon, but which means it should be in your hands not too far off, but don't quote me on any of that. But basically, when you enable, so I'm going to come in here and there'll be this new setting that allows you to enable version control for an application. Okay, so I'm going to enable version control. I don't need a version control in every app, right? Maybe I'm just messing around with a POC. I'm the only person using it, the only developer working on this app. I don't need version control. Maybe I still do, but that's up to me. But here's a big application with multiple developers working in it and multiple versions running. You got your version in production, you have a version in QA, you have a version, you have this current sprint, you have the previous release, lot going on, right? And you want to be able to work in branches just as you would do Git flows when you're working in your code. So now that I have this module enabled, this is my main module, right? So this is and I cannot save it. Save is not an option, right? Branch becomes the option. So if I were to actually go and hit create branch, it's going to jump me over to an application or version control application to create a branch. Now, I don't have any branches, but I'll go to all branches, right? And I can see all the branches that are out there that this module is a part of, with ones that are work in progress, ones that are merged, ones that have just been approved. It's a lot of those same concepts, that you're kind of used to seeing in some of these CI/CD tools. So, and then of course from there, I can create my branch. I can do my work in my specific branch. I get those visual diffs, and then I can merge those back in. And just as I said with everything else, Unqork is fully API enabled for all of it. So the same APIs that the front end here is using to deliver version control will be available to also potentially plug into and get really, really creative and fancy with the things that you can do with integrating in some of your other tools and processes that you have to manage that today. So with that said, let's kill the share, please, so I can open this window back up. Right on. So that wraps up that. And since I showed version control, I didn't really think about doing this when I decided to show version control, but I just wanted to give a big shout out to Russell Epstein from the solutions engineering team at Unqork, who is instrumental in the development of that, as well as many other tools that you've seen and applications that you've seen demonstrated on this Twitch. It is his last day at the company. He's going on to do amazing things, and wherever he's going, I won't say that on Twitch, is very lucky to have him. So shout out to Russell. Thanks for all your support and great work over the years, and everyone here at Unqork, including the Uncoder, wishes you nothing but the best. So thank you, everybody. I hope that gets the juices flowing around some of the crazy stuff that you can do, tying in Unqork to your other processes. Be with us next Tuesday. A lot of content coming your way every Tuesday and Thursday going forward. And have a wonderful rest of your afternoon and wonderful weekend. Take care.